All right, so we have a very special day that we're planned here. I'm really excited about delivering something to you. This is not your traditional webinar. This is truly a workshop. Um, I've never seen such amazing leaders in one place at one time. So I'm kind of humbled to be a part of this and to bring you guys together. The common bond is really, I guess, me, but it's really the podcast. I'm going to share my screen with you because I've got some stuff planned for today. And that's what we're going to do. So here we go. You guys should be seeing my iPad. You guys see that?
Yep.
The only downside to this is I can't really see you guys. Let me see. Maybe I can change the way this works. There it is. All right, I can move you guys down here. And then I can make this full screen. All right, so we are here because you got an email from me or you're a client or both. We have a lot of people here that are just amazing leaders and they want to learn how to go to that next level. And that's what this is about. I was looking at the numbers from last month, and many of you have been on the show before. We were up 263%. And I was trying to figure out why the heck we've gone, because we really hadn't changed a whole lot of marketing around what we're doing, but we were getting a lot more downloads. And so I don't know if it's you guys sharing it or a combination of things just kind of fitting together. But I was like, what's going on here? And so I looked at some of the individual episodes. So some of our special guests today are truly people who have been on the show before. One of the top episodes around leadership and culture, because you guys know I focus on the Inc. 5000. So there's some special guests in here that aren't clients. Many of you are clients or past clients. And some of you are actually both, but I just want to say a special thank you to you guys. This is all founders, CEOs of high, fast growth companies. So again, this is not people who want to be in business. There's no one here that's like, maybe I'll start a business someday, or maybe I'll become a leader someday. You're all doing it right now. And I just want to thank you for your time. We're going to go through this. A lot of familiar faces as I look at this screen here. I don't see Mike. All right. So I'm going to keep going. So the special guest we've already talked about. This is Fast Growth Boardroom. So I do something very special for leaders. And this is certainly not a pitch or anything like that. But this is just, we do coaching, content, and community. The coaching is something that I do in a separate element to this. So there's a little coaching today, but not a lot. It's mostly on the content side. I want to create some of the best content specifically for people that are growing their companies. That's what part of this is today. And then the community is, I know a lot of people are in group programs, and the thing I hear over and over and over is like, a group is only as good as its people. And I wanted to create something for fast growth. That's the reason I've been interviewing fast growth people for the last like 4 years or 5 years. And that's where I focus my energy and client selection. And all of you guys are on the Inc. 5000. So why we're here is to become extraordinary leaders. I know that extraordinary word might turn a little bit people, but bear with me for a second. If you really want to grow your company from where it is today, it's not just putting your head down and doing the work. It's becoming an extraordinary leader, because you don't get to the scale of growth probably that's in your head without truly building a team, about truly having systems that drive all of that. And so what we're here to do is to learn some of the nuance to become an extraordinary leader, maybe to remove some resistance and friction that's going on inside this. I'm going to give you my best stuff I can in this time period. It's also about creating high performance teams and cultures that really create the kind of growth we want. And eventually someday people want to exit. You know, I get an email every week from someone who's been on the show before that's like, oh, I exited the company and I'm no longer there. I'm starting something new. And it's pretty exciting to see that people are wanting to do that. But increasing the value of your company, just for a second here, does anyone not believe that becoming a better leader will increase the value of your company? Raise your hand if you believe that. Eric, do you believe that?
I believe that it will, to be clear.
Okay.
Vernacular is a word.
Because you can't do it all. Like, as smart as you are, as talented and as hard worker, none of you can do it all. So you've got to activate the people around you, and that's what today is about. In some senses, I probably overdone it on the content inside this, so forgive me if it feels a little bit rushed, but that's why we're here. Those of you in the Fast Growth Boardroom, there's some important dates that I want you to be mindful of. Each month we do a coaching call, which is we address the challenges that are going on, and we set the goal for the month. I know that that you guys have set a goal. I've heard back from many of you. You're making some progress on that. So June 4th, we're going to see where you are, set a new goal, and keep pushing. The other training, so we do training once a month on this. We're going to do explicit communication next month. Communication is the biggest blind spot within leadership. People think they're good communicators, and their team will come back and tell me they're not. And so I call it explicit communication, not because I'm going to teach you how to cuss, because many of you can probably cuss much better than I can. Nobody likes my joke. The real thing around explicit communication is, how do you create moments of communication where people feel like they're connected to that moment, and what you're saying cannot be misunderstood. And so that's the next workshop. We're going to go through the 7 elements of an effective request, and that'll be a big part of that. So all that being said, wow, I think we have everybody who RSVP'd has showed up for this today. Next important date is the leadership event that we're doing in September. 2 days, we're racing Porsches. I did this before. Fantastic. It's a small group of people. We get to go to the Atlanta Porsche test track, race 911s and GTR 3s and things like that, depending on what your flavor is. But it is a lot of fun. So put that on your calendar. And then finally, just kind of curious, I know not everybody here is a member, but if we did a leadership in the winter experience realm, Yellowstone, Whistler, or Steamboat, which would you prefer? I'm going to see if my polling stuff works. Okay, my polling stuff does not work. So we have comment. Which would you do? Tony, thanks for hitting there. 3, Steamboat. Which would you guys choose? Just kind of curious. You can put the name, or you can put 1, 2, 3. I just want to make it be easier for you guys. I'll come back and look at this. I've got a plan in these advance. You imagine putting together a 3-day experience for leaders takes some time to put together. So I see a lot of different varieties of different things. Yes, I probably did use the wrong abbreviation for Montana, Bill. Thank you. All right, the next one is the spring event is either going to be dune buggies or driving a tank. So I'm kind of curious, which would you guys rather do? Tank. I'm kind of torn on this myself. So what would you guys do for the May event? Mostly dune buggies, few tanks. I want to do both. I don't know. Maybe there's a way we can do both. I don't know. All right, so that's all kind of the preliminary stuff. We're going to dive into this right now. This is, we're going to talk today. We're going to engage in a little bit. We're going to have conversation. So this is not just a passive thing. But I do, don't say anything that you don't want shared, but also this should be a safe space that we could be confidential. We could say something and no one's going to share secrets and come behind our backs. That's an important part of a people coming together and creating community. And before we get too deep into this, I've heard someone say this to me before, and I thought it's pretty ingenious. So I'm bringing it over here to this. How would you sabotage yourself today? You don't need to tell me, but write down on your piece of paper, however you keep notes, how would you sabotage yourself? Would you flip over to Facebook because you're interested? Would you check your stocks and see what's going on over there with Bitcoin or maybe you're just confused about what's going on in the market? Would you be checking your email or would you be doing something else? My hope is that if you want to be an extraordinary leader, you got a chance to engage with other founders of fast growth companies, that you would be in the moment. But if you write down how you sabotage yourself, it's a physical cue of reminding yourself not to go into that place, not to go into social media or stocks or email or anything like that. That's going to take you away from this moment. I did ask for 90 minutes, but I just would put this out there. When we talk and share, each of you, I've interviewed many of you. Some of you talk a lot more than others, but no one is as succinct as we need to be today. So, one sentence, maybe 2 sentences. We don't need a paragraph. We don't need the whole story. Give us your 2 cents. I want to make this engaging, but if we're not succinct, then I've got to come in and stop you. And if I do that too much, we won't get through all of this, but I do want engagement, interaction. Is this okay with you guys? Perfect. The edge of learning. There are going to be things that I'm going to say today that you're going to feel uncomfortable with. Maybe you feel some resistance to. Maybe you're just not, you think that's just not the way it is. Be mindful of those things. Write them down. Put a star next to the things that make you feel uncomfortable. I'd love for you to just be aware that that's something you don't believe, or you can't do, or that's not possible here. Whatever it is that comes in, when you feel that resistance, write it down, because all growth happens at the edge of learning. All growth happens at the edge of where you feel uncomfortable. And we're going to hopefully find that for each of you today, because not everything here is meant to just be passive and take in. All right, here's the first part where we really kind of talk about this just for a moment. What do you want? You guys can unmute yourself and politely share with us. You can put in there the chat. I can actually see some of the stuff on the chat. What do you want? You came here for a reason. Who's first?
I'll speak up. It's Bill Spone, True Tech Tools.
Yeah.
I'd like a company. I'd like to have a company continues to grow into the next century.
Hey, Gene,
I like that.
This is Matt DL from Alleviate. Just
So
real quick, I think that's an interesting one. I was going to follow up on that.
it's not muted. Who's next? What do you want? It's not a trick question.
Hey, can you hear me, Gene?
Yeah.
This is Matt DL from Alleviate.
Hey, Magneil.
So one of the things that I would be looking for myself is how to go from a founder to a CEO. I think as a founder, I find myself into a lot of the weeds, into daily, day out operational things. And for me, I'd like to, not just from myself, is grow into a CEO, but also give the team and the company the tools to be able to have the right infrastructure in place to
Yep.
be able to keep going without skipping a beat.
You're speaking my language here, because that's primarily what this is about. Because when you feel like you wouldn't be here if at some level you didn't feel like you were a bottleneck to the growth. You
Yeah,
wouldn't
hey,
be there. Go ahead.
hey, Gene, it's Johnny Garcia.
Hi.
So yeah, I'm starting to feel exactly what the gentleman just mentioned, but I've started to release some of the reins that I've had and turn it over to the folks that I've hired and brought in to run the companies, sort of like I have, and I'm starting to look from the sidelines to see how successful we are. What I've seen over the last year is we've been more successful with other people, executing the business than when I was, because I was definitely the bottleneck. And that's what I'm seeing as far as the future is concerned for all of our businesses. Is these young men and women that are coming in are more mindful. They're more focused, and unfortunately for me, I'm all over the place because of all the different businesses that we have, and that takes away from. And I think you said succinct. It's hard to be succinct in one business when I have 7 other businesses that I'm trying to run. So it's, but I'm starting to see positivity from it. So,
I'm going to pause right here for a second, because there's probably some people in here that are like, I can barely run the one I got. How can I run 7? Does anybody think that? Chris, I see you smile. I do work with a lot of people who have a lot of businesses, and they actually get it a little bit better because they've had to. They've been forced to let go. And I think you said something really great there, Johnny, is turn it over to the folks. And they're doing better than I was doing at it. And we're going to talk about some tools and approaches to do that inside here. This gets a pretty good idea of what you're trying to create. I was talking to a gentleman the other day, not a client, but just someone. I said, what's your real focus? He says, I want to create a high performing, self-managing team. Can you guys relate to that? You can raise your hand. Like, that would just be an incredible place to be. Someone that's performing at a high level, the team is working. It's self-managing, meaning you don't have to motivate them. You don't have to tell them, how to do something. You don't even have to, in my opinion, self-managing doesn't require accountability. Accountability is a very important word that gets tossed out a lot. But ideally, when you're having a meeting and you give someone something and it's really clear in this moment, they should take it and they should take ownership of that, not just accountability. You shouldn't have to check in to say, hey, did that get done? I don't know. I'm not alone with this. It's just accountability is a low bar. You want to make sure people are taking ownership of this. And that's a big part of my work. All right. So that's what we're trying to create here. So we're on the same page. The key to this is you got to empower people to take ownership of the work. Johnny, you were talking about this, letting the folks take over so you can, watch from the sidelines. This whole aspect of empowerment is really important to understand this. It's the opposite. I'm having trouble spelling today. Of micromanagement. You guys agree with that?
Yeah.
It really is. I mean, it's just empowerment is complete opposing to, because micromanagement's about control. It's about you wanting to get it right. You want to make sure they get it right. You jump in there. Sometimes you might say, let me show you how to work this thing. Let me show you how it's done. That's you're moving into micromanagement every time you do that. So you got to truly empower people. Ownership on the flip side of this is beyond responsibility, which I talked about. Let's talk about that for a second. Responsibility. You guys ever had people at work that they did just enough to get the work done?
Mm-hmm.
You really can't fault them because they're, you know, this used to be the whole thing of leaving at 5. I remember I had an employee that left at 5 every day, and I explained to her, I said, you know, there's certain seasons during the year that which we have to stay till 6 or maybe even 6:30, because these seasons and these moments are critical to our success, and it can't be done earlier. It has to be done at the end of the day. We had shipments that go out by Federal Express and whatnot. And I said, you know, when it gets into that season, I'm going to let you come in a little bit late those weeks, but you got to stay later. And it wasn't, she would do it, but you could tell it was begrudging. And she was just showing up out of a sense of responsibility. Down the road, I found someone that when I had this similar talk, they were like, oh yeah, I get that. They understood right away, and they were able to go beyond responsibility and take ownership for the entire work in front of us. You guys get that? You want people to take ownership.
This is Tony real quick. We hire against clock in, clock out mentality. So during the kind of like the onboarding process, we ask, you know, what works and what doesn't work. And, you know, we say, I need a 2-year commitment from any employee that we hire. So if you can't give me a 2-year commitment, I pass on hiring you, no matter if you're the greatest candidate across my plate.
I've heard this many times before, and I really agree with what you're saying, Tony. That 2-year commitment question up front is just it doesn't have to be in a formal contract, but if they're willing to commit 2 years to you, they're willing to give you hopefully all of themselves for that 2 years, because you're going to give back to them training and expertise and all of this stuff that you're giving them, but they're committing back to you for two years. I love that. Kind of curious, Tony, if you would tell us, how do you make sure you hire against the 9 to 5?
I use my formula, drainers and drivers. So I ask 3 questions, basically, you know, tell me 3 things that you liked about your last job, 3 things that you hated about your last job. And then tell me the person who hired you, where did they fail you? Because otherwise they wouldn't be looking for a job, right? So they failed you in kind of like onboarding you and not giving you a runway to grow in the company. And so just to back up about that 2-year commitment, I personally, any person that comes into my company, there's about 8 people, any person on my leadership team, I give them a 2-year commitment and I ask the 2-year commitment from them. So it's me giving them that statement, because I feel if I'm going to bring you and put you under my wings, then you need to know. And I ask one other question that's super valuable that no one ever asks their employees or any team member. What's your goal? Like, give me a personal and professional goal. And I will tell you 9 times out of 10, they've never been asked that question before by anybody in a company. You know, I want to know what they're after because I want to help them get that. And then once I start helping them to achieve their dreams, they're going to help me work on mine.
Do you guys find this as valuable?
I do.
This is exactly the reason why I want to have smart people coming together in a community that are sharing with us what's working and what's maybe what's not working sometimes. But these are just, I think these are gold. You're hearing it not from me. I'm not trying to teach you something, but Tony's sharing what he's learned, hiring a lot of people, probably not 70, a lot more. And, you know, this becomes a system. We're going to talk about systems a little bit later, but when you have a hiring system that takes and you really understand, he said this, I'm going to highlight it, against the 9 to 5. If that's what you're looking for, then you've got to look for ways to be intentional about that in your hiring process. And these are ways that Tony has shared with us. It's exactly the right reason why we come together for something like this. All right, so we got here because we were talking about the key to empowerment is empowering people and take ownership of the work. Beyond responsibility, you guys know I'm a professional speaker, and I always have this story I love to share. And it's just a micro story, but do you remember your first car, the one you paid your own money for? I'm sure you do. You remember what color it was? Yeah. That car, mine was a kind of a shit brown in color. It's like 80,000 miles on it. It's like a 1983 Honda Accord. It was a beater, but I love that car because I owned it. It represented freedom for me, right? That first car is just absolute freedom. I got it the day I turned 16 or right before that. And I paid half the money and my dad paid half the money. That was the deal we struck. And I really felt like I owned the full thing. It wasn't part his, part mine. It was mine. You guys can probably relate to that. But do you remember your first rental car? What color that was? Looking at the pictures of you guys, you're all old enough to know. I know you don't remember your first rental car. But you took responsibility for that car. You signed away, you did all the stuff that you had to do. And my only thing for you to really resonate on here is there's a difference between taking responsibility for something and the feeling of ownership. Do you guys get that?
Mm-hmm.
Our job is to lead people to feel a sense of ownership of their work. So as we keep moving through here, leadership is the cornerstone of more growth. The leader that you are today has created the company that you have right now. There's a whole bunch of stuff at play. Everything you've done, all the stuff, the way you've showed up, the energy, the confidence, the courage, the grit, the persistence, everything that defines you as a leader has created what you have today. But if you want more growth, you've got to be willing to let go of that person and become someone else. Johnny said something earlier. I finally decided to give my folks the chance to just do this without us. And that's what we're going to be doing later in this. So I'm always looking for ways to figure out how to help you and serve you. And so you can draw this little quick piece of triangle on your map. Just looking for my notes here. The interesting thing here on this is there are certain challenges that we have that are just inherent in who we are right now. If you're a doer in your business, your biggest challenge is time. And the way you graduate from that is by hiring people. Makes sense, right? Simple. You guys with me so far? And if you've seen this before, forgive me, but maybe it helps to see it again. If you haven't seen it again, just take a look at it. And then once you hire people, you become the manager of people. You're still you're still in that founder mode. And so you're trying to manage the chaos. We've heard this before, right? You're all fast growth companies. There's so much going on. You're juggling a lot of stuff. And the way you get out of this is you start to focus on systems. You may call it something else. Maybe it's technology, maybe it's something else, but you start to kind of codify how you get things done. And then once you graduate from that, your big thing is you become the director. You are directing the traffic and the people around. You are still involved in the day-to-day. You're still in a kind of founder mode. But what I see happening here is your big challenge here is overwhelmed because you're trying to do so much. You're trying to attend every meeting you can. You're trying to attend, be a part of sales and marketing and new products, whatever it may be. The way you graduate from this is you empower your executive leadership team. Now, I know many of you people here have really understood this. We have Lawrence Armstrong, who is now the chairman of his company. And I think I looked at LinkedIn. He was the CEO for 27 years, and he's been the chairman for 18 months. Lawrence, did I got that right? He's on mute, but maybe he'll come back to us in a second. And he knows the value of that executive leadership team. And I think all of you do at some level, and you're all in different places. And that's one reason why we're doing this. You're trying to decide where you are and where you spend most of your time. Once you empower your leadership team, you become the leader. And then the biggest challenge is people. I had a client once who said, doing the work is easy. These people, that's what's hard. Can you guys relate to that? It's all their emotions. It's all the things that are going on. It really is something that you have to understand how to do. And then I believe the way you graduate from this is you really get an ownership across the company. All the people are able to take ownership. And when I say all, I know there'll be people that are still 9 to 5. That are still key players. They're doing certain things. Maybe you have hourly employees that don't feel a sense of ownership. Your business probably has that. But in all the key positions, all the things that really matter, the ones where you're expecting people to make decisions and really think for themselves, you want them to take ownership. That's the way you get to be the visioneer. That's the way you get to be the chairman, like I was talking about with Lawrence.
I have a thought to interject here.
Yep.
Bill speaking. The challenge for me is sort of like the implicit bias that people can't do it. And I always have to retrain my brain to believe people will be awesome. And when I do that, they tend to surprise me.
Yep. We are going to hit that a little bit later, but you said it differently. And so I appreciate you doing that. The bias, people can't do it. That's the one, that's the normal default, right? What's the empowering belief?
People are amazing and they become amazing. If you believe it, that's my theory.
Do you guys get the simplicity of this? If you default to your thinking that people can't do it, you will always be the bottleneck. I know you've got stories of people that don't have the experience, don't meet your standards. I'm taking you to the edge of where you feel uncomfortable, but this is a great way just to pause for a moment and say, if you believe people can't do it, you'll never empower them truly. You'll never create ownership because they'll feel that tension and resistance. But very simply, what Bill's saying is people are amazing. If that's the choice you could make in your beliefs. And then he said something, they surprised me.
Gene, one of the things that we talk about to our leadership team is that you deserve the organization you have. So, you're the one who hires them. You're the one who can train them or, set the stage for them to succeed. So, you're the bottleneck, right? So we are the leadership. So at the end of the day, we feel that, again, we deserve the organization we have. So we got to do what we need to do to create the path for them to succeed.
Perfect. Here's the question. Not to discount that, because hopefully you guys understand this. You deserve the organization you have, and it really is about you, the way you've shown up, your beliefs. If you're not evolving, your organization won't evolve at the pace it could. Hiring more people is just putting bodies in there. You need people that can think, and you need to empower them. That's what real scaling of the company looks like. So back to this little 5 phases of growth. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand on this, but you know, if you're spending more of your time directing people because you feel the sense of overwhelm, or if you haven't even reached that point yet, you're still managing people. You're still managing the work. So I think the number is wherever 50% is. So if you put, I remember one of my, I was doing this with someone that said, 5% down here, that's doable. There's certain things only you're going to do. He's 10% here, he's 40% here. He's 10% here. What's the rest over? 60, 35. That means he's still in the director area, because if you add up the 50%, this is where he is. So that's where you determine where you are, wherever that 50% mark is. Anybody have questions about this?
I think where we've experienced this, and maybe where the challenge exists, is getting beyond the notion that everyone has to move up in an organization versus everyone continuing to grow an organization. There are people who greatest skill is as an individual contributor, even as a senior individual contributor, because they don't have the competency to manage others, right? And so finding ways to enable people to grow when they're just not ever going to really be able to elevate to managing other people, because that's not their skill, right? So finding ways of enabling people. I talk about, as you move through the organization, the expectations change, but you have to want to meet those other expectations. If you don't want to meet those other expectations, if that's not a desire or a goal for you, then you're never going to be happy in that other role. You have to find a way of growing without having a new set of expectations that just are misaligned with what you want to do.
Love that, Scott. The biggest example that comes up in my world is whenever someone finds someone in sales who's a rock star, and
The Peter principle, right?
Someone gets the idea and go, well, we should make that person the leader of the company or of the sales team.
Salesman, right?
I don't have any specific numbers, but does that ever really work out the way you want it to?
Yeah.
Does it? I don't know. Most of the time it doesn't. Most of the time that person is not capable to manage and lead a team. And if you left them as being a rock star, I won't point names, but I have a client on here who has someone on their team who is that rock star in sales. And the great thing about that person is he has enough self-awareness. He says, I've managed people before. I don't want to go back to that. I just want to go get the big deal. And we've got to be comfortable with, there's no, Scott started this thing of, you don't have to move them up in the organization, but they do have to grow. You have to challenge them in certain ways. Maybe it's new skills, maybe it's close bigger accounts. In this case, that's what excites some people. They don't want to move up. They don't want to be managers. But guess what? This is not about them today. This is about you. You've got to decide where you are on this. And if you want to move up, if you want to kind of go up this way, this is where more leverage is.
It's Tony again. Hey, quick question. One thing that we recommend for our team is, so all my VPs, 7 of them, they all have to find their replacement, and not to be replaced in the organization, but to become visionaries in their departments. Because there's no room for them if they're so busy doing the herding and the managerial work all day to day, then where can they grow the department? Because they're just, at the end of the day, they're through it. The other pieces I love about sales, I come from a sales background. One piece that we do is we try to get sales people to fill in the gaps where they suck. Salespeople suck at the end of the day. They're not great with the numbers, but if Bob calls on the phone, hey Bob, I'll get that over to you right away. But instead of having to do that, they have people behind the scenes to get that over to Bob right away. So they don't even have to apologize, and they can just do what they're good at, is sales, right? Closing deals.
Yeah.
So that's one piece that we did just to help. But I love Scott, thank you for dropping that. It was some good stuff right there.
Perfect. So don't take my word for it. If you believe that just execution is the most important thing inside of your role right now, you are the bottleneck, because Harvard Business Review, and I know this is a little bit old, but it's a time-tested thought that focused on execution will derail your growth down the line. What I really mean by putting this in here is we've got to become more leaders and leading the leaders inside of our organization, so that they're leading those people on the front lines of executing. Not everybody here has, 100 employees. Some of you do. Some of you have 200, 600. But you've got to be focused on your evolution as a leader. So I'm just kind of curious, and again, we're going to be succinct here, but what are some of the symptoms of being the bottleneck? What do you feel when you're the bottleneck of the company?
Can I answer that?
Yep.
Because I've gone through that over the last, I would say, 24 to 30 months. We're in the process of building a $160 million hyperscale data ecosystem on the East Coast of the US. And the first 2 years of the development and architecture, I ran it. And it was a mess. It was a mess because I ran it. And over the last 6 months, I turned it over to someone else in the business to run. And we've accomplished more in 6 months than we did the first 30 months because of me running it the way I wanted it to be run. And I found out a lot about myself. I found out a lot about a number of our employees. And I saw that I was wrong in my approach to doing it. I lost a couple $1 million because I wanted it done my way. But I needed to figure out how to let it go and let someone else run it. And we're even closer now to having it completed because we did that. And it took one of my employees to tell me, hey, Johnny, the reason this is the way it is because of, me. And my focus wasn't there on the actual development and architecture because I was still running 6 other businesses. And I didn't want to let go. But that also led to me letting go. Yeah.
Anybody else have, that's good because it feels like a mess. And I get the fact that you've been through this and it's fresh. Anybody else have any symptoms they can share here? What would you see?
As Jory, I think one of the common symptoms is if you allocate your time based on the things that you think you're supposed to be spending your time on, and you do a true breakdown of your allocation, and you find that it keeps shifting one way or the other into other categories, generally it's you're the bottleneck in those.
Anybody else have something to add here?
I would say when it feels like people don't understand.
Give me just a little bit more on that.
They're missing out on what the expectation is. And you just feel like they don't understand. They don't understand. I got to do it myself.
Yeah. Some of you guys are clients on here and I haven't shared who's a client, who's not, because I don't want to break confidentiality around this. But one of the guys on here, when I first talked to him, I said, how would I know that you're the bottleneck? And he said, well, there's 14 reports at the edge of my desk that my team expects me to review this week. And that's what I typically do. I've got 25 years experience in this industry, and they really, rely on me to review the work. Now, we all know as outsiders, that's probably not the best use of a CEO's time. Can you guys agree with that? You really want to be able to identify the places where you're the symptom, to give you the real context around that. I said, how long does it take you to review those reports? He goes, about 3 hours each, maybe 2 to 3 hours. I said, that's half your week of reviewing reports. And he's like, yeah, that's what I do, half my week. And the beautiful thing is no longer does he do that because he's able to let go that piece of it. All right, this is meant to be a little. Go ahead.
I was going to say I meet everybody when we hire them. So I have about a 30-minute meeting with every single person after we've hired them. And it's just a chance to kind of meet one-on-one and have a conversation. And what I tell everybody is I have the same spiel, but I do this so I can tell everyone I told you this when you were hired. That I've held just about every job in our company through my career. I've had those roles with the exception of 2. I've never been a CFO. I've never been the head of marketing. Every other job I've had. And I tell them that because those aren't my jobs anymore. I've had your job, but it's not my job. And my job is not to make the decisions. My job is to be the plow that clears the road for you to make those decisions. So I don't want anyone feeling like I'm looking over their shoulder. Like I want you to make the decisions, but I want you to come to me when there are things that are in your way. Like that's the conversation that I want us to have, is if there's something that's holding you back, let me remove it. But don't come to me after the fact, right? And say, here's why something couldn't be done. Come to me beforehand and we can remove it. And then that way, that's my way of putting you in charge. Like you make the decision, you drive, but come to me beforehand so that if there's anything in your way, we can talk about it. But don't come to me with excuses afterwards about why it didn't get done.
Scott, it's funny about that is I think one of the hardest things in my organization is getting good information, right? Where do you go to get good information about what's actually happening? That's right. You can do everything in order to open up the lines of communication, but you never know if what they're telling you is actually what's happening. And it's not about trust. It's just the nature of it. So I've always tried all these different exercises. In leadership meetings, I almost never talk about work. And the idea is that when you don't, people start talking about work. And the things they talk about, those are very likely the honest things. That's how we get a lot of the good information from the organization about what's actually happening. It's interesting.
I want to highlight that for a second. I mean, maybe I should write that down, but I can't talk and write it down very well. He's not talking about work. He's doing these leadership exercises. And I see too many people missing this opportunity. Not sure who that is, but you can mute yourself. He's leading the people through these exercises and having different kind of conversations, because if all you talk about is the milestones, the metrics, and what to do next, that's managing the work. That's not leading the person. You guys get that? And in order to stop being a bottleneck, you've got to become more of a leader. That's the reason why this 5 phases of growth is what it is. So this is meant to be fun. You guys can put the numbers in there if you want, but this is different types of bottlenecks. The expert, the one who has all the answers, the one who reviews the work. And just where are you now? Be honest with yourself. You don't have to put this into the a chat or anything like this, but are you a 6 in this case? I just met with a prospective client the other day, and they said my CEO, his biggest challenge, or COO, is that he tells the people what to do instead of letting them figure it out themselves. And he needs some coaching around that. The COO should understand to empower people to take ownership. So where are you on this expert? The next one is the hyper involved. If you're overscheduled, you're probably doing this a lot more. If you feel guilt because you can't be there for everything, where are you? What's your number? All right, number 3, the recovering micromanager. Nobody's a micromanager on this list, but maybe you used to be. And it's fine, because when you had 4 people, it was a little bit easier to be supported. Maybe you couldn't afford to hire really experienced people, but you had to learn to let go of that. But you struggle giving up control sometimes. You've got to weigh in on the decisions. I get this a lot. I think we talked about it. We're frustrated when others don't meet their standards. And go back to Bill's question. I chose to believe that everyone's amazing. If you believe that everyone's amazing, you would be on this rarely side. All right. So the doer, this makes sense. The person who believes and just jumping in. Let me help you out here. You can do this at times, but if you're doing it all the time, it really is. If you're down here, it's a problem. All right. And then finally, the firefighter. This was the one that got me when I ran my company. When we were going from 1 million to 5 million, I felt like I should be removing the obstacles for my employees. And I had a coach almost 20 years ago said, who told you that you had to remove the obstacles for them? I said, nobody. I want to make sure that that they're just doing what they're supposed to be doing. They weren't doing the hard stuff. I was. I came over every day exhausted, and I was way down here. So those are 5 different types. What you do with that is just lock it in. See where you are. Just be aware of it. I'm gonna have to speed up a little bit here, but I always want to create these frameworks around here. I've been doing this for 10 years. I want to create things that allow me to communicate effectively so they can't be misunderstood. And I've broken down growth, predictable growth, into 3 parts. One is your team. You want your team to play at the highest level. Great. You want systems that are always evolving, and you have to lead all of this. The problem is you're not expanding the way you need to. I think you're coming here today because you guys want to expand something, maybe see a perspective, maybe learn from others like we've already done so far. So we're going to go into the inner game. I told you I'd share with you 3 mistakes. If you're the bottleneck, you have the wrong mindset. Bill's example earlier was as good as I can believe. He believes that their people are successful. That's his mindset now. You guys get that? But if you believe that they can't do it, you'll always jump in. You'll always make the decision for them. So you've got to make sure you have the right mindset as you begin to evolve. And here's the beautiful thing about mindsets. You're never done. You are never completed in your journey of having the most powerful, empowering mindset that you could have, because there's always something you're working on. And this isn't meant to be, to bring you down. We're all working on thinking more clearly about who we are and showing up as that best version of ourselves. The problem with people with the mindsets is everyone knows this formula, right? You're all where you are today because your company has taken impeccable action and gotten results. I don't know who on here is the fastest of the Inc. 5000, but it doesn't matter. You guys are creating different markets in different places. You have different teams, different goals. You guys have all demonstrated incredible results. And so you understand that you've got to take actions. I want to give you a little bit of an edge on this formula. And it looks like this. If you guys have seen this before, this is really about what do I do, right? What actions do I take so that I can have, the money so that I can be free. You've seen this formula before. I think that this doesn't really work. I think actually we want to change the formula, and it looks more like this. Be, do, have. The best example I can give you is if you're more confident as a leader, you will create leadership and you will have the team you want. Simple example, being more confident, being more decisive. Having trouble spelling today. Does anybody have any questions about this being part? Here's the key. If you can define who you're being with the action you're taking, you're going to get better results. The problem is sometimes we show up frustrated. Do we get very good results when we take action when we're frustrated? Are we creative? No, not really. So what I'm asking you to do when you're in a moment of leadership, when you've got to have a difficult conversation, is for you to be intentional about who you're being before you take that action. It's a very simple thing. It is literally you taking 3 seconds to go, what do I have to believe? Go back to Bill's thing. If he believes that people can't do it, is he going to have a conversation where he's delegating this work the appropriate way? The answer is no. But if he believes people are amazing, then he has the conversation from that perspective. That's his shift, right? He's optimistic instead of being pessimistic. Do you guys get that? Is this too out there for you guys? I know you guys got a to-do list and you got a lot of stuff you got to do and you got to show up for meetings. But when you get the fact that you can show up as your best, most empowered self in every moment, you will be able to be a stronger leader. Here's the word I hear the most. Being reactive is killing your growth. If you're reactive most of your day, you're not being the leader that your team deserves. Who here would give me just a little bit about the dangers of being reactive? You've learned it. I know a lot of people have learned this. You're really trying to get away from it. But who would share something with me? I'm sure many of you do. Bill, you got something there?
I end up spending time apologizing afterwards and wasting time because I realize at some point down the road, I realize it.
Yeah. It is, if this is the way you're being, right? Will you ever be the leader that your team really deserves? Will you ever get to the kind of growth you want? Will you ever move up that triangle being reactive? From what I've seen, it's extremely hard. So how do you do it? Well, becoming the best version of yourself is unlearning the things that have made you exactly where you are today. So you've got to be willing to unlearn some of the approaches you make. You got to be able to step back just like any visionary would and say, what's really going on here with myself? And look at this in such a way that you've got to look for the shifts that are necessary. Here's the exercise I do with my clients. We won't have time to go through this today, but I want to give it to you because I think it will help. And maybe we can do a micro version with anybody you want. But the story I want to share with you here is, I call this the higher self exercise. This is part of my frameworks that I've been developing over the years. And, are there other versions of this out there? Probably. I don't pay attention that much to what other people are doing, but I know with my clients, if I can get them clearly to define how they're showing up now, if we can put words to what's getting in the way of them being the leader that they need to be, that's the first part of the step. So step one is now. Who are you being right now? I had a client of mine right after this Porsche event that we did last year, or not last year, because no one did anything last year, did they? In 2019. And he sat down with me and he said, you know what? I'm anxious way too much. And I am, he talked about anxiety. He talked about just the pressure. He had 300 employees, 20 years of leadership experience. And he said, the leader that I am today, he's from the Army, the leader that I am today, I don't know if I'm going to make it in the next 5 years of this company. He got really sober to how he's showing up now. Do you guys get this first part? Any questions on how you're showing up now? If you can get this and be honest with yourself, this is the hard part. Are you showing up frustrated? More than you should. Frustrated with your team, frustrated with not getting the results.
Gene, one of the things that we do on a monthly basis, we have a monthly call with our, manager, all the managers. Of course, we have weekly, but on a monthly basis, we have a one word go around and how do you feel? One word. And that pulse tells us how we're doing as leaders, as well as a team. So if you hear anxious, frustrated, nervous or positive versus, nervous or anything like that, we get a great pulse. And this one word is something that we use all the time. So one word, how do you feel? No explanation, just one word. So just an idea of this.
Yeah, it's exactly what we're talking about. I do it when I'm doing it one-on-one with a client. And of course, we're not one-on-one here. We have 20 amazing leaders. It's hard for them to initially get to it. This is something that I have to pull out of them. This is one of the benefits, I guess, of coaching. I'm not emotionally attached to this, but when you get really sober to the way you're showing up now on a more consistent basis. I know you have your moments of just, pure joy and excitement and for what you're doing. But what is the way you're showing up now? Back to this story. So I'm going to start step 2. If you're really defining your higher self, I'm not asking you to be someone you're not. I'm asking you to make a choice to be the person that you want to be, to step into the next level of you. And so what this person actually did when I was talking to them and said, when I am calm, everything shifts inside my world. I go, tell me a little bit more about that. He goes, I can do anything. He goes, I'm unstoppable. And it's like, okay, so when you're calm, what does that look like? And he's like, yeah, I'm not getting angry. I'm not frustrated with anyone. I'm able to listen to them and I'm able to respond with the right question. I'm able to make the decisions that I need to make. And this is the president of a 300 person company. They're 400 now, so they've grown. $50 million. This was what unlocked something inside his leadership that allowed him to move to a completely different place. When COVID fell apart, he was the first leader I talked to when everything was shutting down. And I felt like he would revert back to this way of being because of the unknowns that were going on. It was common. I talked to some leaders that were literally like their hair was on fire. But he said to me these words, calm minds will prevail. He goes, I'm just going to keep that in my mind as this goes forward. I'm not sure what's going to happen. Do we have to lay off people? I hope not. Do we have to do this? I don't know, but I know if I'm calm, I will be the best leader I can be. Do you guys get the simplicity, but also the many levels that which this defines how you're showing up? You guys get that? This is some of the deepest work I do with my leaders. I mean, many times we're very strategic and tactical, but when we decide how you're showing up and we define this higher self, who are you becoming? Things get much more clear, and now they're able to operate in a different level from that. So moving into the second one, your actions, you're not spending your time on the right things. Okay. A lot of people understand that. You know, there's so many tools out there about, you know, which quadrant are you working in, the, you know, the urgent or the important. I try to go beyond some of those things, but you know, in order to move to the next level, you've got to spend your time on the right things. And this is what gets you out of this. Take a scan of this time chart that's up here. Are you, let me explain the different times. I know you don't have the worksheets in front of me because part of me just said, you know, I don't want to overload you guys with this, and I don't want you to get ahead of me. But let's go backwards here. Free time, free days. How many days do you are completely unplugged? No email, no, you're there for you, your family, your hobbies, whatever it is. Where do you feel like you are in that chart? If you have no free days, and I understand there's seasons of which we're working. Like if you're trying to raise money, if you're going through an acquisition, you're going to not have those times. But are you okay with where you are right now? Is it critical? Does it need improvement? Or this is something that you've made a priority and it works for you. So that's free days. Personal time is really just time for yourself. Do you have time to work out? Do you have time for your hobbies? Do you have time to unplug and rest? Like, you know, do you have that built into your schedule? If you don't, then you know there's something to work on. Family time. I've got one teenager, I've got a wife, and they mean the world to me. And I know that I'm not intentional. I don't want to lose sight of that, how important it is. So I actually include this in with my work because it's important to me. Hopefully your family is important to you, but where are you? Do they need more time? Leadership time is the time to develop others. The time we're truly connecting with them, one-on-one meetings, team meetings, all of those things that, not meetings for status sake, but where you're truly leading the person. If we go back to, I can't remember who said this, I think maybe it was Tony, is like we ask them about their goals, their personal goals and their professional goals. This is a great conversation inside of our leadership conversations, not just when we hire them, but throughout the process, to make sure that they're growing and they're on track. Because if they feel a sense that working here allows me to achieve my goals, then they will love working there and they'll take more ownership for it. Visionary time is really just the time that we spend strategizing and looking at what the future will be, and really thinking about around, you know, looking at the bends around the corners. I asked a question to many people just like you and said, if you don't do this, who in your company is doing the visionary work? The answer is always the same. If I don't do it, no one does it. Impact time is the time that you're doing your most valuable work. So all that being said, you should be able to put on here, and you should be able to find the things that are below the line. This is not one of those things where you work on the strengths and you just keep doing the things that you do really well and just keep it. This is the one things where you find the one or two areas and and you figure out a way to improve them. Does anybody have any questions about this framework on the time chart? All right, I'm going to skip that. Another way to look at your stuff, and I want you guys to participate with me here. We all do $10 task. We all do things that we shouldn't be doing, but are you really intentional about it? A buddy of mine, Todd Herman, who's been on the show before, did this, and I kind of borrowed this over. And I just want you guys to be very mindful of this. I have someone on my team that sorts and tags emails, so I only look at what I need to look at. It's very inexpensive to do that, and it has saved me tremendous amount of going through and deleting a bunch of crap, to be honest with you. Is there anything else you guys would add to the $10 list that, and I left space here because I purposely want you guys to give me some things. What could we add to this list that you know are $10 tasks that you're doing? Nobody wants to play with me?
I think that sometimes because I've been started and came up as a problem solver and have a particular bent towards marketing or something, sometimes I find myself reviewing something and then trying to improve it, or do the little research, which none of that is what I should be doing, but it's kind of my, it's that old habit sort of thing.
So I'm going to put improving things over here, but also in here, because there can be little things that you're improving. But if you're trying to improve a marketing campaign, that's a higher level function. So we'll put that over here. The real key here is for you guys to be very conscious of what you're doing on a day-to-day basis that could be given to someone else, could be delegated to others. And so one-on-one meetings, I don't recommend you delegating that for many reasons. You coaching people, that's a $500 task. It adds value much beyond the moment. If you truly are doing that. Financial analysis, the time you do that, maybe financial analysis can be over here, but this is the real question. What are the $5,000 tasks that you guys do in your business? Just give me 1 minute. Somebody shout out a couple of things that you guys are doing that are worth $5,000 an hour.
I can answer that. And I've been doing this lately, is the interaction with the customers. That's by far probably my most important job and duty is the interaction with our customers.
Perfect.
Here.
Who else can add something to that?
I would add making connections to kind of fuel your growth.
Anything else?
I had been calling on a client down south and for a month and change, and I know I have the service that he needs. So looking at what's transpired over the last year, the lack of personal communication or in-person communication, to be more specific. I went to a local barbecue store, this is in Western Tennessee, picked up 20 barbecue sandwiches, knowing the guy couldn't see me, went, met with his assistant, said, I'm just here so he could place a face with the voice, but now you can. Got a call from 15 minutes later, apologizing that he couldn't come out and asking when we could meet this coming week. And we started doing business with him prior to that. I think you really put the odds in your favor now, getting back to some of those old things, handwritten notes and in-person visits.
Love that. The key customer approach. I would add in here things like any kind of visionary work that you're doing, right? Mm-hmm. Strategic planning. The point behind me putting this up here is not everything is equal. You need to make a conscious, intentional choice as a leader if you want to stop being the bottleneck, to be moving in this direction. You want to be over here as much as possible. I know this is the obvious, but most people are drowning in smaller things. They're drowning in the things over here to the left. So that being said, I'm not going to go through this exercise, but this is an easy one to kind of grasp. The time audit matrix is literally listing all the things down here that you're doing in a week. You list them down, the meetings you attend, and the real asterisk here is the doctor has said to you, you're on bed rest. You can't do anything for the next 6 weeks. So who would you do it? What's the name? Right? And then listing what is the mindset or skill set that they would have that will allow you to give that up and let go of it. It's a very simple way to look at this. And then basically you prioritize this and one by one, you begin to empower. Here's the beautiful part. These are probably things that either you don't want to do anymore, you know you shouldn't be doing, and you're just doing it out of it's just the way it is. But if you're constantly looking for the person, this person wants an opportunity to step up and grow and learn. And many times they appreciate you giving them something extra because they can learn from it. But we don't see that part of it. We don't think about it. All right. The empowerment framework is a very simple way to delegate. A lot of people are not delegating effectively. I call this the 3-3-1. You may have heard me do special episodes in the episode about it, but every person should come to you with an understanding of what this 3-3-1 framework is. Now, if you've got a very young employee with no experience whatsoever, this is not as useful. But when you have someone that you've trusted and has experience and you really want to empower them more, instead of them bringing you a problem or an issue or a challenge, you ask them to bring you the answers to 3 questions. What is the problem? The real problem. What causes the problem, right? What's the trigger? Who or what is impacted by the problem? Those 3 questions, 1, 2, 3, are really for you to make sure that you're talking about the same thing. You're not talking about 14 different problems and you're not talking in circles. You really are talking about one problem. They understand what's causing the problem. They're not just bringing you symptoms, and that they know what the impact is across the organization. And then you ask them to come up with 3 options. What are the 3 options that you see as what we should do next? You want to see if they've thought through what are the things that we could do, what's possible. And you would, if you really are empowering them, you want them to give you the one recommendation. And you can say, yep, let's go. Or you could say, wait a second. Let me ask you a few more questions. Hopefully you get more of this. The wait a second is if you don't agree with their recommendation, you want them to see it differently. And so you're going to go through a different course of actions. But if you had everyone in your organization doing this, would things change? Would people feel more empowered? Is this simple enough for you guys to grasp? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Here's what was beautiful. Use it with your executive leadership team. They'll get it right away, but it's so simple that they can start using it with their teams. They can use it with everybody that's on the front line. There shouldn't be a person that has an issue that isn't capable of saying, oh, here's what the real problem is, here's what the cause is, and here's what we can do about it. So that being said, just another one of the frameworks that I wanted to share with you guys. I love systems. Systems are predictable. I'm an engineer. I don't know if you guys knew that. I went to Georgia Tech. Don't fault me for it. But I was an industrial and systems engineer. And so I love such systems in my own business, and I've seen the power of that in others. We need systems to grow predictably beyond us, but we want them to grow through ownership. Go ahead. Who was that? All right, so we want them to grow through ownership. So systems are not there for you to push on and develop as much as possible. Now, if you don't have enough people, I get it. But the idea is to get people to really help you do this through ownership. This is about your people. Now, there's many different types of systems in this. This is certainly not all of them, but I've got clients that I've been working with for a long time that have been like, this whole year, this is all I'm working on is the sales system. I want to get that right. We've got the other things right. I want to get this right. We'll get this right. Work with me to help me do that. Fine. But systems are really a way to create repeatable results. One system inside this is a strategic plan. I think this is out of order a little bit, but a strategic plan is a system. It's not a document. And if you truly want to empower yourself and unlock yourself out of this bottleneck position you're in, you want to have a strategic plan that is really pretty powerful. It can't be in your head, right? It can't be just up here. It's got to be communicated to others. So in fact, I believe a strategic plan that is impossible to misunderstand or to be misunderstood is the key. That's the goal. How do you create that kind of document, that kind of information? You want to make sure that it's available to people with feedback loops, because those people that aren't really using the strategic plan, they don't have a sense of ownership around this. And you want to make sure that every individual department and everything is empowered through this strategic plan to take ownership of their work. Most strategic plans don't work. That was the right order. I tried to find some real specific data behind this, but all I found was like some broad numbers. But I also know that most of the time they don't work because they're not truly living the plan. They're not making it a part of the day-to-day in the conversation. I'm not saying sit down in meetings and just go over the plan. I'm saying create something that is shareable. There's many different ways to do strategic plans. I just threw up a couple of different diagrams. I'm going to give you guys these slides if you want them. This is a business model canvas. I'm not familiar with these tools, but some of my clients use them. And the one I use, I've created it, it's just a Google spreadsheet. It allows for collaboration. It's shareable. It does tracking. It creates alignment, but you have the core information. You customize this to your company, and you have things like mission, your values, your vision for the company of what we're creating. I know you guys can't read this, and I'm going to give you a copy of it if you want, but this is the 1 year plan, the quarter, and there's other pieces behind this. You can do color coding so that you can see where you are. Green is things that for my clients that we've already accomplished. Red is things that are not going as well as expected. And so you can have different areas for this is about employees right here. This is the rally cry, which is something I use in my business. This is about departments. So all in this one spreadsheet, you can have each department, even you as a CEO has something that you're doing, and you can fill out this and keep everyone aware of what you're doing. You can have your sales team filling out this. And I share something like this with you because you want to make sure that the systems in your business are evolving for where you're going if you want to create growth. And if you are the only person with the ideas, then you're missing out on a chance. Any questions about the strategic plan? If you're not sure where you are with this and how do you make it, shareable and hard to misunderstand, then I'd love just to sit down with you and help you, just as another gift for you. If you want to do that, you're welcome to reach out to me. I want to help you become an extraordinary leader. And if any of these tools are something that you want help with, I'm happy to give for you guys. I feel like this is a very simple framework that I wanted to share with you guys as we wrap this up. Is there's a paradox in leadership. If you want more of something, you've got to be willing to understand there's two sides to everything. If you want more trust, you want to receive more trust from your people, you've got to be willing to give more trust. You guys get that?
Mm-hmm.
There's two sides to everything. If you want ownership, you've got to be willing to give ownership, and you've got to be willing to they've got to be willing to receive it. Your employees have to be willing to say, I own it. I got this. And you've got to be able to trust them enough to do that. So all this being said, excuses don't help you. If there's anything in here that you're not sure about, don't make excuses. It really is up to you to drive this. It's easy to do what you've always done. The enemy of success is a lack of patience. And so my final question to you, what is more important to you, growth or control? I took us right to the edge here. Excuse me? All right. So if you guys want to stay connected with this, I know I've got your email addresses, but you want to stay connected with each other in some way, I've got a free group that, and I hate Facebook as probably as much as anybody, but if anybody wants to be connected with each other, then you can use these links or ask me what the links are. It's a new thing I've started. I want you guys to learn from each other, share with each other. I'll be sharing some media opportunities if you guys want to get more media for your company and things like that. And this whole reason for being here is to help you become an understanding of how to be an extraordinary leader. And I'm here to help you do that in any way I can. So anybody that needs to leave can leave. If anybody has a question, I'm going to stick around for a little bit, answer questions and do anything you want. Again, I promise no pitches and whatnot, but if you have any questions, let me know. Everybody's dropping out.
Thank you for doing this, Gene.
Thank
You're
you,
welcome.
Gene.
Any questions?
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Gene.
No questions, Gene. Appreciate it. It was good to connect again here.
See you, Alex.
Thank you, sir. We'll talk soon.
Thank you, Gene.
All right.